Well, hey everybody, welcome to Kush and Kai. I'm Kai.
I'm Kush. What's good, y'all?
Oh, today we're watching, it's hard to call a classic, but it did happen in the past. 1976's The Man Who Fell to Earth.
This is
Now,
an interesting pick that you pulled for us, Kai. Now, for those maybe listening to us for the first time, for those just because who like to hear my voice, the last episode we did was The Queen's Gambit, the Netflix series, and we uncovered that Walter Tevis wrote The Queen's Gambit, and then he went on to write a bunch of other things, such as The Hustler, which went on to The Color of Money, of course. And then he wrote this story called The Man Who Fell to Earth. You pulled this thread for us.
Okay. I saw this and I was like, I remember seeing this when I was 6, which is alarming, or 7,
Wow.
which is alarming now. I saw it on Betamax at my grandmother's place. And I don't remember any of the scenes with any titties because there's boobs in this. That's flying around. There's a Bowie dong pops out for a minute.
It peeks out for a sec. There's some Rip Torn dick as well in there.
For sure. Rip Torn is tearing through co-eds.
And having a great time doing it.
He loves it.
This is the greatest job he's ever had in his mind.
He has a monologue where he's like, I can't just keep sleeping with them over and over, different ones. He's like, I have to stop. And he like distances himself. But this is a very weird movie because there's only about 12 minutes of spaceman stuff in this movie.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a weird movie, but again, this is 1976. Another movie from 1976 we covered was Network. This was a year for experimental cinema, and so they're just trying everything. We don't know it works or not yet. We're just doing it to do it, and it's wild, son.
I was trying to come up with a sci-fi comparison, and
this would be the thing you compare sci-fi to, okay?
It doesn't. This does not fit neatly into any category other than just like, well, we're just trying some shit. And Logan's Run came out that year, which still falls into it's post-apocalyptic-y, but it's still in the sci-fi genre. This doesn't really sit there.
I would like to say it's consistent, but it's chaotic at best.
It's consistent in its randomness sometimes. Like, there are some hard editing choices where it's like, what? Like, we just saw a hardcore sex scene, and now you're ripping bluegrass on us, and then there's like a Texas sheriff scene. He's gonna come get you, and it's like, what?
That never pays off or goes anywhere. He's just like, we better, those city slickers are from New York. We better run their plates. And then they do, and then nothing.
A lot of license plates, too. They focus in. Like, at some point, license plates, like, numerology factored in, and then they just sort of like, we don't have enough time. And again, this movie's only, 2 hours, 20 minutes, which is a long time.
However, this movie, that's a long time.
It feels longer than that. This is one of those movies that is like, why is this still going?
To be fair, it didn't feel 2 hours and 20 minutes. Like, I remember pulling this up on Amazon Prime, available for free, those who have Amazon Prime. I read the description, which you and I had already talked about, and then I saw the runtime, and I was like, 2 hours, 20 minutes. Fuck, it just feels long. Like, going into this movie, it felt like homework. And that's always an automatic negative, but it went by quickly for me, man. Like, I was just hanging out here, just watching. There's some phone scanning, but maybe an hour 45 is what it felt like to me. Like, I kept wanted to see where this was going. Ultimately, it goes nowhere, which is wildly underwhelming.
The drag part mainly to me was in like that last 40-minute stretch where the movie just comes to a dead standstill.
The whole plot is he builds a business to raise funds to build the vessel that will take him back to his home planet. And he does all of that. He does all of that.
This was the clever bit. That was actually that was compelling. Yeah. That was like, oh, that's cool.
And then something happens where he's like, we got an hour. Let's go back to my house for a minute. And then he gets kidnapped. It's hard to understand, like, did he have himself kidnapped? Because Candy Clark, who plays Mary Lou, which is ultimately his Earth wife.
Was she in cahoots with Rip Torn?
So
because
here's
they were
what's up.
together at the end.
They are together at the end, and that's because they're living on the same property. They're literally just across the lake from each other.
Right.
Yeah.
With the weird blue 70s police light that I never...
Yeah.
What is that? Kush?
That's to identify the dock at night.
But you just have like a flap light. Why is it's full, the circulating...
So you can see from all directions? I don't know. It's the most miniaturized version of a lighthouse, buddy. That's
Kush. Okay, so that was time number 1. And I mean, that answer was sufficient in like a solid guess. I don't think that's what it was. I think it had to do with some spaceman shit.
It's a safety
that's
thing.
Time number 1. Everybody, start your counter. Where I am just going to ask, like, what the fuck is going on here?
Okay. Yeah.
That happens a few times.
I've only seen, this was the very first time I've seen this, but I feel like I picked up a bunch of, I've only heard of this, never had any desire to see it, or at least any opportunity to see it. So when you said, Kush, we should watch this, I was like, I'm in. Yeah. This is our second David Bowie movie.
Yes.
We did Labyrinth back in the day.
Sorry about
and
that,
this is
Kush.
quite the opposite of Labyrinth.
This is
again. We were dealing with David Bowie's codpiece in Labyrinth. We got David Bowie's cod.
Bowie's dick. They just Bowie dick is in this movie. Okay, so wait, real quick. This came out in '76. So Space Odyssey, that was his first top 5. That was in '69. Ziggy Stardust was '72 to like '74, and then Young Americans was 1975, which is another hit for him.
So I'm glad you brought this up. So he got paid $250,000 to do the soundtrack, which was ultimately rejected. And then from there,
are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. This is the IMDb trivia, my man. This is what everyone comes to the show for.
There's an unreleased David Bowie soundtrack for a Spaceman movie written.
There's actually not.
Oh, wait, why was it rejected? On what grounds? I keep interrupting you.
They decided to reject it for whatever reasons they rejected it for. However, he still made the songs. He still owes the songs. So he took them and made 2 other albums out of them. One of the albums was called Low, and I listened to that today. Oh, and then so 1976's Station to Station and 1977's Low were the result.
There you go.
Came from this movie. They were ultimately supposed to be the soundtrack.
We did hear those. Okay, so those exist. Wow. That is a fun piece of trivia.
Speaking of music, did you hear this very dramatic score in the background? It's very faint in one scene. I can't even picture which scene it is at this moment. They also played it in the original trailer, which I sought out for this. I don't know if you did or not.
I did.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yes.
So okay. So that is called Mars, the God of War. Is that Holst? I forget who does it. It's a part of a whole album of planets.
The planets, yeah, that's Holst.
Holst, okay. Yeah, I imagine it's royalty free or whatever, because I know that track from the Venture Brothers, and I knew that they were doing a nerd reference when they were doing it, but I didn't know it was from this. It's definitely from this, but at the time I was like, this is from some superhero drama or something that I'm not familiar with, or it's an episode of Star Trek I didn't catch.
John Williams has stolen heavily from that series, as he does from most, classical composers. For sure. That trailer to me, and I was already worried when I was like, hey, let's watch this. It's been a while. I was like, that was a weird movie. I go back and I got worried because even in that trailer, what they dial in on, at least the one I saw, was David Bowie's first dramatic role. They say nothing of what it's about.
He does exposition in the trailer. He's like, I'm from a planet. We need water. It's a desert land. Well, like you get that much, and you expect the movie to be about that, and then you see Rip Torn in talking to him, he looks like Walter Matthau at that time in his life. But he's like, is this a weapon? And he's like, why would you think it's a weapon? No, it's not a weapon, baby. Yeah,
it's groovy, man. I'm not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
Like it.
This is too small to be a space capsule.
Yeah, they don't address any of it, and they just lean on David Bowie, and it was like, I'm a little worried about this. I went back and watched it a few days ago, and it just dragged, and it was whatever. But I came back this time, and I got juiced up because it does embrace, like, it's 1976. There's some crazy shit out there. Jaws just invented the blockbuster the year before, and it was all right, we're taking a swing. We're taking chops. Just like Mary Lou, where she seems learning disabled like most of the movie, and then she throws out like, but don't you think God's out there somewhere?
Mary Lou
we're
is
taking
an
swings.
interesting character. Mary Lou, played by Candy Clark, who is ultimately married to Nicholas Roeg, the director of this film. This was her movie. It's a David Bowie project. It's a David Bowie debut, but this was her movie because she's supporting all this shit. She's doing the dialogue while Bowie is staring out of a window. She's a 4-year vet at this point. Like. She's already done American Graffiti. She'll do the sequel. Debatably, American Graffiti, her biggest movie, maybe Zodiac. I don't know. She also goes on to do Q. She does Blue Thunder, Amityville 3D. She's in the remake of The Blob. She plays the mom in Cool as Ice, as well as the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
Wow.
She is absolutely delightful in this movie. Again, like you said, she's spacey. She is always drinking gin and then getting mad at Bowie for having his drinking problem. But she also feels like she's stoned or on pills or something. There's an element to her that we're missing that we never catch. Because she's always just like, don't you think about higher power, man? You know, and
I think it's called borderline personality disorder because the second they meet, she's bonded to Bowie. Like she moves in like the next day, or he moves in with her, whatever that is, and she's immediately like, I love him. He's great. This is what we're doing. And again, if the movie started when they got to the hotel in Haynesville.
I want to say they're in New Mexico.
Yeah, I think that was it. They were going for that Area 51-y vibe, but it looked more. I don't know. Did you look up where this movie was shot? It was all over the fucking place. It's like Houston,
parts of New York and Houston and Albuquerque, New Mexico.
For sure.
There's a thing here again on the IMDb where the director, Nick Roeg, wanted to get rid of any sense of time in the movie because it was surprising how often people would mention it in their lives. There was even one reference that he almost missed where they're talking about, I've been here 3 months already, and he had it overdubbed. Like, time is definitely very abstract in this film.
There's jumps. They look back. He sees, there's a scene where he looks back in time at Settlers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is he doing, that's happening, right? That's not.
It's hard to tell if it's happening or if it's a vision or if it's a hallucination or if he's just drunk or if he's on some other drug that our man Walter Tevis isn't hipping everybody to. But yeah, there's a second where they were settlers from like the 19th century see David Bowie's limousine drive through their land.
They're reacting.
And he's seeing them.
Yeah, they're going like, whoa, what's that? I mean, it could have been something else switched out, but he's experiencing that where the dirty settlers are like roaming up the hill and shouting and have pelts and such. I got to say, if you put her and him, like Mary Lou and David Bowie together, you're part way there to a Beth. You know, you got this savant that's also just like there's like a dusting of autism or whatever that is. It's just sort of like, oh, they act different. Like,
well, they're definitely yin and yang. Okay, they absolutely need each other to get through this period in their lives. Some more trivia. Candy Clark. There's a scene where, so David Bowie being the alien, like there's a scene where he asks his driver to slow down because going 40
what's
miles
up with
an
that?
hour.
What is?
He's not used to the atmosphere.
Okay.
He's going too fast. His body can't handle going that fast. So when we get to the elevator scene and they're just shooting up, like he's like, the gravity, it's gravity and all that bullshit. Okay.
Candy Clark almost executes him via elevator. Like it's going up to, and it's one of those dangerous ones where there's no gate. Like just the door handles are whipping by as they're going up.
And there's no lock either. Like she could just stop that elevator like 3/4 of the way in.
Yeah, no, there's no like set like piece to it. It's just sort of like up and down. And she's freaking out.
It's a comedy piece that isn't being treated as a comedy piece or being respected as a comedy piece, because she does like 5 different rounds before she finally gets it right, and like Bowie is just like dying at this moment, like his nose is like sprayed blood.
Oh, it's full on slapstick. But like, again, if the movie started there, where he's just sort of like some trouble, you edit out a little bit of the space stuff and just put in like musician. It's just sort of like he's going through an OD and he meets this bellhop lady that works at the hotel. Like, that's the movie, basically. Like, it's just their tortured relationship through him not being able to deal with fame and you slowly getting like deeper and deeper into alcohol. Like, that's the arc of that movie.
You brought that up to me a couple of times, and I keep neglecting that fact that there's, you know, symbolism in this and whatnot. Like, I'm still treating this as the alien on Earth. He's apparently got a pocket full of wedding rings that he's just pawning off to people to make enough money to buy a lawyer.
I have an explanation for you.
Please.
Yes, time dilation for sure. But you're just bringing up something at the beginning of the movie where he needs to get his first, like he needs to get a couple of bucks, and he goes to sell a ring.
He has a passport from England.
Okay, that was one of the most confusing plot holes.
That I got nothing for you on. I have no explanation about that, because he's still supposed to be an alien. He literally just came out of the salt flats of Utah or wherever the fuck he is in this time.
Colorado, you know, an episode of Gunsmoke. I don't know, but and also he falls to Earth, so he didn't like, you know what I mean? He didn't have a base and a setup and a whatever. So we have to guess that he put this together before, because he was saying all the TV signals bounce around out in space. And so that's what attracted him there. That's how he knew what Earth was going on. I thought, too, that, that's how he gets things. He trades for rings. No. You remember in that, it wasn't a pawn shop, it was like an antique store with that old lady.
Because it was the only thing in town. Otherwise, he would have gone to the pawn shop. But yeah.
For sure. But that lady opens a drawer, and they do the push-in on... She has a piece in there, and it has like a rainbow pearl handle. And also, too, the thing that goes away after the first 15 minutes is zoom-ins on people's eyes. What? I mean, that is in here. But the zoom-in here is like, we look at the gun, zoom in. We look at his eyes, zoom in. And then it's like he's at the drainage creek that he drinks out of because he likes water.
He needs water.
And then he has a bunch of rings and then money. Kush?
Yo, he's done this a lot, apparently. Like, he's got... he flipped out 7 or 8 hundos, and then there was still money to go. Like,
I mean, Kush, my theory is that he didn't arrive with a bunch of rings because he fell from the sky. He killed that old lady with that gun. Took her money and took the other rings. That's what he did.
Rings.
He took the rings because he had a mission. He needed to get the water back, but that's why they were so focused on, like, see what's going on here? And I'm like, he came to Earth as a milk soap. Is that what you would call their people's androgynous base form? Milky soap is what you see. And then, I don't know. I don't possibly know how you could have gold. And then $20 for a gold ring back then? Like, is that... She's really running a hustle there.
I mean, it's 40 plus years ago, so who knows?
This is true. We'll have to look.
And also, you never getting a fair price when you're pawning your shit, man. Like, she's just like, I'll give you $20, take it or leave it. Like,
that is true. She did throw that out there, where it's like, yeah. You look like you need the money. Don't hassle me.
Yeah. That's the problem with the pawn shop. This is what we'll give you. We still have to make money on this.
Haneyville, that's where he landed. Haneyville has never seen anything like him. And when Bowie shows up, not familiar with how cars work, almost gets run over almost instantly. And then he encounters one of America's greatest bounties, which is hobos on carnival attractions.
Oh, yeah, and that's terrifying.
Come here. Yeah, and then he just falls asleep on a bench. So, and then we get to the antique shop lady. But I think he killed that lady. So after this, we get introduced to our second most consequential character, Oliver Farnsworth.
Oliver Farnsworth, who I have no information on, but he's definitely a patent lawyer. And he remarks that Mr. Edison You
Edison,
have
right?
9 patents here that rival like Kodak and Panasonic, and like he's naming all these established things. Like you got shit on them. Like I don't know if he has their patents or what the deal is, but
He had some baller technology. Kush, I want one of those popcorn maker style Alexas that he has. Like
oh
you put
yeah,
you put a globe into it and you put the top on and then you hit cook and
yeah.
yeah, it's just
That shit
music without
was
lyrics apparently.
even then that shit is silly. Even today that shit is silly. It was weird. Yeah, it's just this tiny little sphere. It goes in something the size of a planter, and that's supposed to play like Billie Jean is not my lover. I wanted to say someone else, but whatever.
He has some interesting technology, although the one they feature the most prominently is it's a Polaroid camera. That's
His whole thing is his biggest technology asset seems to be just photography. And that's where Rip Torn comes in, because one of his floozies has one of David Bowie's instant cameras, and they film themselves having a lot of sex. And it's
okay, so Kush, the first time we have him seeing sex, and it happens
is
a few
violent.
times.
Is violent and unnecessary. Like they're just breaking shit.
It was a lot, and it seemed it was
This
actually
bitch took her panties off, grabbed a photograph of his wife and child,
it was a portrait,
and put her panties on it, and then started fucking Rip Torn with that as a prop. And it's just like, who's having sex like that?
That is an aggressive move, right there. But even more aggressive is splicing a sex scene with dinner theater of Japanese semi-samurai people attacking each other.
There's a 20-minute segment where they're just doing parallels between Rip Torn and David Bowie.
Kush, again, what the fuck is happening here? What was that? What? Bowie looks at it for a second, and he's eating. There's like sushi and like sake around him. So he's like, at a restaurant, there's other people, there's tables. But even in a symbolism sense, like, is it just that the sexuality is raw, or like what? To what end is the bigger question? I'm like, why did you?
He's talking about like Rip Torn. I've been watching you for a while. Like I feel like he had an absolute connection to Rip Torn, so he's watching him fuck during this dinner theater at the sushi restaurant. And it's just way too much for him to handle.
Yeah, because he can remote view. Like, there's a scene later where he appears to Rip Torn. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like, it's very messianic. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like Jesus shows up. It's like, hey, buddy. And then he meets him like the next day. But he was astral projecting, a la, Luke in Your Last Jedis, or what have you. But that, like, he just either mentally or in the physical realm, but that one, they throw a lot of stuff at you that the director does not apologize for. He's like, you just gotta roll with it. That happened. We're going there.
While we're talking about the director real quick, Nicholas Roegs, who is also married to the supporting actress Candy Clark, he passed away 25 months ago as of this recording, at the age of 90. Some of his projects include The Witches.
I have a couple written down. Yeah, The Witches, for sure.
He did the 1990 Witches. He did a couple things with the Young Adventures of the Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Hell yeah.
His last thing would be a documentary in 2014, the film that buys cinema, but his actual last film 7 years prior would be something called Puffball and the Devil's Eyeball.
I thought it was really bold to put ball in twice. Like that's hard. That's like, it's a lot to chew on there.
What do you think that is?
I couldn't even tell you. I didn't get this deep in the research, but I do have to say he did do a 1986 version. Not version. It was a movie called Castaway, where a chick gets stranded on an island with a dude for a year. But they are both topless in the cover art for that. So I feel like he does have a streak of, let's put some boobies in some things. And yeah, he was,
the nudity in this isn't, it gets wild, especially Rip Torn's sex scenes with the co-eds, but it isn't like gratuitous or anything. Like, we're never focused on something. Like, it's just, this is the scene happening, And there we go.
It had a mode where it was like, with sort of our sexualities out, we're naked, and then they would just sort of like
she's in the bath. Why wouldn't her tits be out? Okay,
for sure.
Like,
yeah,
David Bowie's in the bathroom with her while she's in the shower.
They would pace around, or they would kind of slap each other, or a butt would be bitten. David Bowie did that. It was pretty straightforward. But again, I miss boobies just popping up in media again. I guess it's an attack on women now. I apologize ahead of time. But if we just, Game of Thrones, listen, it goes a long way. Throw a titty in there. Like, why not? Like, titties exist. Are you angry at titties? That's what I'm saying. I'm not. You shouldn't be either. So for that fact, it's like, oh, yeah, that's refreshing. There's boobs. But then also seeing, man, I mean, just Mary Lou's character when he gets to that hotel, as I said, borderline personality disorder, but like she instantly gloms to him and then sees somebody, like, I guess we didn't know as much about drugs and overdoses then. She sees a guy, like a rich out-of-towner with the briefcase, blood running out of his nose, and collapses in the elevator. She's like, you need a drink or pills or something. Like, you need to get back. And it's sort of, oh, lady,
well, what's amazing is that she picks him up. She doesn't call for help.
That was so baller. She just deadlifts David Bowie, who has to weigh 73 pounds.
And while he weighs 73 pounds, that's still heavy even for a woman of Candy Clark's stature. Now, here's a fun trivia bit about that scene.
Leg day.
David Bowie is actually sitting on a bicycle seat that is welded or fused to a skateboard that is hidden just well enough. So she is just pushing him along. He's propped up the entire time.
Oh, wow.
Movies.
But I love
that.
Amazing. Could you imagine? I mean, this is why I'd love to work in like a prop department. Just sort of like, okay, we need a skateboard to move David Bowie through the air. I'll be like, yep, I'm there for you.
During their first meeting, like I forget if he's throwing up in the bathroom or whatever, but she's like, you're awful skinny. You're really skinny. You're a skinny motherfucker. All right.
Kush, you could just tell me, it's like they actually had to write that in because he was detoxing from heroin. Probably. And he was just fucked up. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. I was just on his Wikipedia, and it was like that career path was tough because he overdosed on cocaine 3 times in 1977. And you're like, oh, okay.
I sincerely hope not. But speaking of his weight and speaking about getting sick and speaking about et cetera, so David Bowie is so skinny that some of his clothes were actually boy sizes, not adult sizes, boy sizes. David Bowie got so sick one day that he was out for 2 days. He couldn't make 2 days of the shoot. So there's a scene where David Bowie is wearing a black hat that is covering just enough of his face, and that is actually Candy Clark in the scene because both of their hair is red, and again, they're just both wafy enough, and she's
about to say
him.
that. It just after how light he was that. There's a scene. There's multiple scenes of them having intercourse or whatever they're doing, but when they're both naked, they look so similar. It's just sort of like 2 Ken dolls are being struck together, and then there's like a shock of red hair, and it's just, oh yeah, no, they look so androgynous, and I don't know. It wasn't like off-putting, but it was just sort of like, I don't know what they're like. They're sort of like pacing around. Anyway,
more Candy Clark trivia, just real quickly. Candy Clark obviously played Mary Lou. She just played that one scene I told you as David Bowie. She also played David Bowie's alien wife in those flashbacks.
Oh, of course. Who were the kids?
Some runaways they found and then threw back on the street. They probably died. Yes.
No. We see a scene of them where they're trying to revive that. Okay, look, we only get.
Well, we also get a scene where he does return for a brief second.
Does he?
We do get a scene where it looks like those kids have died, and by all accounts, I've agreed. Those kids died. There's a scene after that, way down the road, where they are all embracing, like he has returned. It's a triumphant, like, I'm glad you were back.
I thought that was him leaving, though.
It could have. There's a scene of him leaving for sure, and he actually
I
closes the little
no
hatch.
Right answer to this either, because the director, I think he's dead, but he'd be like, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of shit going on.
Not only was there a lot of shit going on, but I have a feeling the version you grew up with, the U.S. version, there's, again, going back to the IMDb trivia here, the U.S. version actually cut out some scenes and rearranged other scenes to better fit the narrative. Okay, so the version I saw last night, there's a sex scene where it's years down the road. In fact, they have aged Candy Clark with makeup. She's middle aged now. She's absolutely in a relationship with Rip Torn, who looks like he did in 2005. It's amazing.
How did he do that? But the time jumps were just like, wait, what? Did it happen? Did it happen? I mean, there were other ones, but minus the gray hair, it was like, is this like that same day or like 4 months later? And they're like, we're not going to tell you.
We're not going to tell
yourself.
We're not going to.
Yeah, we're moving on.
Before I get off track here, the U.S. version cut out the love scenes with the gun.
Of course. Which, that was the most, that was so disturbing.
It's wild.
He's mixing drinks with his gun and putting it in his mouth. And then there's a whole buildup of him pointing it at her and going like, yeah, I'm taking you out. And you hear the gunshot and it goes to black and they come right back. And he's like, it was filled with blanks, baby. It's like the saddest. And then
there's a whole sex scene. There's a lot of strobes. There's multiple position switches. And he's always going like, I'm rich. I had them call you. I had them give me the gun. I had them give me the blanks. It was all for you, baby.
That doesn't need that. Like, there's no movie that this needs to be in. That was so. It took up time and just added like that sucked.
And then at the end of that sequence, the censors thought the same thing.
And like that kicks off the whole, eventually he realizes he's not being confined in his house. He's free to go.
The house is weird too that they set up in. This is we're referring to a scene after he's built his ship to go back home and he gets kidnapped. He's taken to this place where as you walk in, it looks like a demolished building, but all of a sudden the deeper you go into it, the nicer it gets. Then they make sure to you go deep into this apartment, FYI. To the fact where there's a secret door, and then finally Bowie's behind the door, and he's got a bed that's strapped to chains, which I imagine ride up and down on some sort of engine. Quadruple
maybe
engine.
they were electrified or magnets, or
I've seen beds like that before. I've never been able to get into the actual architecture of it.
I know what a sex swing looks like, but he's in there, and he eventually realizes that he can escape. He does it a couple of times, and then he stays the first time. And I think, again, if this is in the book, and I don't know how many differences are from one to the other, but it's at least the director going he's just embracing the disease path that he is on. He's just sort of he's in captivity now. He can't go back, and he's just choosing to be there.
He would have to be at that point. It makes no other sense. He built the rocket. He's in a position where on the way to building the rocket, he's like, I want you to send me a statement twice a day up to the nearest 50 millionth dollar,
Yeah.
His man, forget his name, the patent lawyer, at one point he's like, yo, man, I would not be selling this technology to so-and-so. I would not sell the Bible to Random House. Okay.
Farnsworth. That was with the glasses. And again, we get a couple just push-ins on his eyes. It's this is a very, it's distracting every time it happens. And then they just nix it. And you're like, you could have cut around that, but they don't.
They make several references to the fact that he has terrible eyesight. And then they kill his character by throwing him out the window. But it feels like he knows, it's time for me to be thrown out the window. Guys, we don't have to do this. That was
so weird. He wasn't struggling. And they do
they have a second take where they throw him into the window and it only cracks. He never goes through it. And then they have to do a second time where he finally does shoot through it. But
that happens when they kidnap Bowie and then they take out Farnsworth. But they also take out, and again, I know there's a nude scene with the both of them on the cutting room floor somewhere, but
Probably.
his male partner Trevor is also, he's lifting weights and then is also unceremoniously thrown out of like a 37-story window
too. Trevor doesn't know.
He didn't even notice. Like they could have just left. Like he didn't notice all the struggle and the window tossing. But his gay lover is out there. Yeah, they take care of him too. They could have framed him or something, but was that was the government, right? That's who showed up?
I think it's supposed to be some CIA bullshit. It's definitely So there's when Bowie does arrive to Earth, there's a dude just hanging out at the top of the dune, the top of the dune, just like, haha, Bowie arrived as we thought. Like he knows about
it. There's a guy there.
There's a conspiracy already about it, and maybe that's because satellites are a new thing at this time.
I know. I didn't get that at all. Like why that was already being tracked.
There's a dude observing Bowie from the minute he sets foot on Earth. But we never see that specific dude again. And then we get to the Chancellor, the Dean, whatever. The black gentleman from Revenge of the Nerds.
There it is.
He's definitely a high-powered government official. He's in a biracial marriage.
Yep.
We see a little bit of his life, and then nothing comes from it except that we saw that he's aged. They comb some baby powder in his hair. He's absolutely naked at some point.
When he ages up, actually, it was before he ages up. He's just wearing a shorty kimono around the house, and I was like, "Did I just see?" I thought I saw something just swing down, like just below the.
Oh, you may have.
Yeah, just the edge of the kimono. And I'm like, this is such a perfect, like, we're going there.
You may have seen him do that, but he also, he dives into the pool, dips low, comes back up, picks his wife up,
out of the pool.
And he's just swinging hard, okay? That's not the first scene his dick is in.
No, there's
lots of dicks tonight on this conversation.
There's dicks, there's booby. They got Mary Lou, and then also what's her name? And there's a few sets of boobies, which is like cool. When everybody's naked, but it was pretty equitable. It was like look at his butt. There's a dick here. We got there's some bush shots, and I gotta say, there's some real trimmed bush shots too for the 70s.
For the era 70s, those are nicely manicured bushes.
Yeah, that is a English garden level of like, oh no, they tried to keep the rows straight, and they're
they saw Emmanuel in Bangkok, and they went, no, we gotta get that short.
Yeah, you gotta get this under control. Okay, so he starts this company, gets a lot of money. He goes to this town,
the World Enterprises Corporation,
right? And he just moves in with Mary Lou. We find out he's living at her place. That was one of the details.
Really okay? I thought they just got a place.
He was at the hotel, but then when they cut away and you come back, it's in a different spot.
Yes.
And then they do name check the line like, oh no, we can't stay at your place forever. But they sort of do.
Okay. And he's rocking 7 TVs in her.
This is what I want to talk about. It starts with 4, which I think it was 1, went to 4, then it's 6, and then it's a wall.
It's a wall. It's definitely a wall of 12. I counted 7 at one point before that.
I think it was 12, because I think it was 4 across and 3 down.
Yes.
When it's the wall of TVs.
He's watching them all simultaneously. He's able to understand everything. It's driving her crazy. Honestly, I don't blame her. But
I don't blame her either. But in that same scene, he also starts to freak out. It's like, get out of my mind. And I'm like, homeboy, you got the remote. You have it right there. This is
when we first get to his alcoholism. Like he's all about, I just want water. I just want water. I just want water.
Pond water.
And then all of a sudden,
water,
just like,
drainage
give me
ditches.
all the gin you have in the world. Okay, like, and I'm hip to time is abstract in this, but like, she tempts him with gin. He's like, no. Like, there's never a scene where he's just like, this is the greatest stuff I've ever tasted. I must have more of this.
She's a full-on alcoholic when she meets him, too. She moves herself in. She doesn't have a good border of where he starts and she begins, she's just like, we're together. Oh my gosh. Oh, do you want the gin? It's booze, pills. She's out of control. Like this, she's a nightmare.
She finds out that he is married, and married is fantastic to find out is a universal system. But she finds out she's not the woman in his life, and she's like, well, I guess I'll do it for the time being, and just goes with it.
Okay, being second banana, and then
she's
pushing
very okay
booze.
with being second banana several times in this movie. However, she starts having a hissy fit when he's only doing the test for his rocket ship, and then they're giving her the lawyer's trying to give her a check for lots and lots of money, and she's like, "But I want Johnny," and it's like,
yeah, and
look,
she
bitch,
flips
this is
stuff
yours
off
whether
his
you want it or
table.
not. I don't want to hear this.
And then also, I think it's posited that she's in cahoots with Rip Torn and the government to get him imprisoned or whatever it is. Like, somebody tipped somebody off. Like, you had to send the CIA to throw the fun boys out of the window.
Where he sets up like camera and some microphone equipment, which is super like
X-ray pictures.
It's X-ray pictures, but like the microphone equipment he uses for this is like a tiny satellite dish, and it's a whole setup, dude. It's not just your cell phone on the counter anymore. Okay?
No. It's not even the portrait mode here.
I think Rip Torn is eventually in on the CIA conspiracy, but I think Candy Clark is naive to everything going forward.
I would believe that as well. I did name check that she might be learning disabled earlier, just because that story she tells about the train, she literally goes like, I used to love the train because it had vendors and the other carts and the things, and we'd see Grammy, and then one day it didn't have those things anymore. Don't you believe in God? I'm like, oh my God, this is a full-on crazy person.
I think pills are involved, but still. But
persists, does not change. That is all the way through for her.
She's consistent about that shit.
Yes, for sure. That, again, consistent as just being like nutty, into TV, and constantly drunk. I gotta say, Walter Tevis had some issues with women with drinking problems. Like, that is
fair enough.
In his DNA. Like, and it's in this and the
Queen's Gambit.
The Queen's Gambit. No. The Player, Color of Money.
Oh, The Hustler?
The Hustler, Color of Money.
Hustler.
Dig. No, I got to go back and watch The Hustler, too. More Walter Tevis action.
Possibly. But, I've seen The Color of Money, and Maria Conchita Alonso, or whoever that woman is with Tom Cruise.
Good time.
She's the only one in there with, like, holding shit together. She's the absolutely one that doesn't have a substance abuse problem.
I love the property that they developed out in Haneyville. They had great off the dock, because there's multiple docks, great Japanese gates. They're called Torii.
Yeah.
That looked really cool. Like, they stuck with that. There was like some Japanesey undercurrents in here, but I have to say that's where David Bowie like reveals himself to Rip Torn. And what's so confusing about this movie is that Rip Torn plays a big part in this, but those characters don't meet until an hour in. So you're watching David Bowie doing and reacting, whatever, but Rip Torn is like, he's a professor, he's banging co-ed, he's on the tenure track, they can't fire him, but
they can't fire him, but he still, he eventually gets a job from the World Expo Corp, or whatever it's called.
For sure. Wear white pants.
You know,
he gets a job, and he
takes a job from them, and he's just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, guys. Like,
he's just there. There's a lot of reading of early Xeroxes with a lot of algebra on them that is just sort of like, well, that's what he does. He just peels through those. The patent guy, Farnsworth, is like, yep, that's the page I'm looking at. Although I have to say, Rip Torn has a little backbone to him, because he was like, he doesn't know what David Bowie was mysterious is like, what do you have me work on? And he thinks it's a weapon. Farnsworth is like, or not Farnsworth. Rip Torn is like, if it was a weapon, I'd have to quit. Like, there's some morals. There's a little like moral caramel in there.
That's the thing of the 70s. You were absolutely patriotic and you had a thing. Nowadays, he was just like, I might not be so into this unless you bump my pay up like, another 35% or something.
Yeah. And he gives the line where he's like, yeah, the cynical scientist. I'm a cliche. There's the spaceman and there's the peacemaker. You wouldn't understand me. There are some genuinely that was kind of funny. I like that. But Rip Torn lures him into the X-ray trap and he gets the pictures. But I know this kicks off the next piece of the movie, but we never see Rip Torn telling, you know what I mean? He must have told the government, I guess, but I don't know.
I absolutely believe he informed the government of some wild shit that happened. Rip Torn in real life, in 1994, he filed a defamation lawsuit against Dennis Hopper, who told a story on The Tonight Show about a story on the set of Easy Rider, the pre-production set of Easy Rider, where apparently Rip Torn, according to Dennis Hopper, pulled a knife on Dennis Hopper and threatened to stab him up.
Nice. The only other news story I could quote for you off the top of my head about Rip Torn was the time that he got so drunk during the day, and this was only I think 6 years ago, when he was still alive. He drove to a bank because he thought it was his house and began urinating in the lobby and told off a security guard who asked him to stop.
You're speaking about an incident that happened in January of 2010 where Rip Torn.
Oh, it was 2010. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. You
went to a bank in Lakeville, Connecticut, and was ultimately arrested for carrying a firearm without a permit while intoxicated.
Firearm. It's even better.
First-degree burglary, second-degree criminal trespassing, third-degree criminal mischief by the Connecticut State Police. Ultimately, the man had dementia and had a $100,000 bail set. Over a series of trials, he would ultimately get a suspended sentence, but ended up with 3-year probation.
Yeah, I remember pieces of that story, but I forgot about that he brought a firearm into a bank. Oh my God.
Rip Torn, who we talked about, who looked a little bit like Walter Matthau, but when they aged him up, looked like the Rip Torn that you and I grew up with. RT's biggest year, arguably, is 1997, where he was in Disney's Hercules playing Zeus, was in Men in Black playing the character of Zed, and then was in his 5th year of the Larry Sanders Show.
Wow, Larry Sanders Show also too. That's a
fantastic show. Anyone who doesn't know about it,
that's a great stretch right there. Yeah, we'll miss you, Rip Torn. Gosh, some good projects in there. Plot-wise, we've been jumping around, but we've been talking about the Mary Lou and David Bowie relationship, which is very chaotic. But there is an iconic moment where, because he's been having flashbacks of this is what his world looked like, and then it went from green to brown, but he never really says it. He only talks about the water once. You know what I mean? I read the Wikipedia entry for this, and it is nothing. It does not describe what the movie's doing.
The movie again is very abstract. Where again, we need water is mentioned. If this movie was made today, David Bowie would be stashing barrels and cases of water everywhere as part of some sort of PTSD thing.
There'd be a crazy water dropship thing. You could have told me this movie was Tenet. You know what I mean? He's going through time. He needs to rescue his people. He's to avert things. I should say that David Bowie was in The Prestige.
Yes,
as Nikolai Tesla.
I remember that being a good movie. I haven't seen it since 2006.
It's actually better on the second rewatch, but that's why I name checked Christopher Nolan or for Tenet. I'm I would like to see him tackle this, and I have to say it. I think this concept would work as a multi-part Netflix series because you can get the technology, futuristic or space age technology. You can get some version of the economic market and manipulation, but then you can also get the adjusting to Earth stuff. I don't know if you can have as much dick in it, but at the same time, you explore the relationship side. I really think that could work. Like, I could, if this popped up on Amazon Prime, I wouldn't be mad.
So, this movie has already been remade, Kai. 11 years later, they would make a TV movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1987. And it would be heavily altered, where we're not dealing with Edison anymore. We're dealing with John Dory. And that's played by Lewis Smith, who is in the Heartbreak Kid. Do you know what that is?
Oh, I've heard the name. I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
It's a movie about, I might even have the wrong title. Some greaser in the 50s does a drag race, ends up diving off into the quarry, dying. He is transplanted back into the 1980s because his son, who, while that sounds, the timeline of that is wildly inaccurate, his son's about to make a mistake and he has to save him. Howard Hessman is there, all that good shit.
Oh, man.
Fun movie for what it is. But however, Robert Ricardo and Will Wheaton are also in it with Annie Potts, Beverly D'Angelo, and no one else of name.
Did you check out any of that? Like, see any footage?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. Sorry to say I did not.
I'm gonna have to at least like take a peep at the direction they went, because it's got to be different than what we were looking at.
It's got to be way more heavily censored than the American version that existed even 11 years prior. Paul Meyersberg did the screenplay. He also did a movie called The Last Samurai.
Hey,
in 1990, not to be mistaken with a Tom Cruise film.
No, Samurais Abound. Oh no!
It would end. Lance Henriksen would be the biggest name that you and I know. However, it's not about any of that.
Well, you might know him, Lance Henriksen.
Last Samurai, 1990. So here's the story. Following the trail of a samurai ancestor, two Japanese businessmen on a quest for spiritual fulfillment arrive in Africa with a group of tourists, only to get kidnapped by the guerrilla leader.
Yeah.
And a tough mercenary must rescue them. I'm going to guess that's Lance Henriksen.
That's got to be Lance. That's our boy. Wow. Lance, too. Yeah, that's a no pun. Okay. Well, I mean, check that, everybody. We'll be thorough. We'll be in there. Kush, we've been talking about Mary Lou and Bowie, but there is a turning point. There's just sort of like before and after, and that is when they have kind of a fight. They're back and forth, and Mary Lou is
the sex scene with the revolver, which was actually cut out of the U.S. version entirely.
There you go. I don't remember that at all, because that is disturbing. No, it's well before. It's closer to the halfway point, but it's where Mary Lou tells Bowie, "Oh no, I don't care who you are. Like I love you. It's fine." And so he transforms into the
all of his hair falls off.
He's got the cat eyes. It's striking and creepy.
It's a good scene.
Like they do that shocking thing, but he lies down on the bed, and we're like, "What's he doing?" But that's actually what she asked him for, was to show himself.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes, and then there's a weird. It's not sex. They're just sort of, again, naked and like.
She's trying to accept him. She's having a very hard time doing it. The reveal of his alien presence causes her to piss herself.
She freaks out.
Maybe the most gratuitous scene in the movie. But
she freaks the fuck out. And then she ends up naked squatting in a kitchen. And I have to say, anytime you see somebody like naked and squatting in a kitchen, like something went wrong. Like this.
She can't handle it 100%.
Yeah.
Why should she?
That was trouble. And then there's another time where they also have a falling out, and I'm pretty sure he beamed the memory of his family back on wherever the fuck he came from to her, because she's talking about things he's remembering.
Okay.
Yeah, he can memory beam. He can like see through time. They really keep the lid pretty loose on like what powers he sort of has.
He's fragile as fuck on this planet. Okay, he's not like Superman where he can lift a truck or anything. He is always in peril. Okay, so when she's having her hissy fit, about whatever it is at the time. I think cookies are involved. Like
there's violence against cookies in this movie, Kush. There's violence against cookies.
He's like literally grappling onto the doorway for dear life. Like he's about to just plummet further than 4 feet will allow him to plummet.
He's drinking to sort of mitigate the issue. He can't go in a car that's too fast. It's kind of a mess. Like he's really just, again, we're like 4 edits away from it mostly being just about a musician that has a drug and alcohol problem. Now, back on his planet, when he leaves, you need to help me decide here. Because they travel exclusively on what looks like it's a little monorail car. And I can't tell if it looks more like meatloaf or it's a triangle SpongeBob-esque pineapple. It is one of those two. Do you remember?
I remember the contraption you're talking about. It's a weird triangle device transport thing. It's definitely on a monorail. That is the device he uses to come to Earth. And there's a whole thing where he pulls the hatch down, but then they hang out there for a while. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they walk away. Sometimes they walk to it. I don't have an answer for this. I just know that sometimes they're living in it.
Yeah.
They are waiting for his return. They are seeking shelter in it. There is actually like an RV canopy where you can shield yourself against the sun.
It has a few maneuvers to it, but it's hard to tell what exactly is the through line there, because he comes back and it's like the bodies are dead. But I guess, because of the drought, most of the folks must have died back home. So that's...
Despite the fact that they're wearing all packs that I imagine is transporting water through it, or some
keeps
sort
their
of water
juices inside.
Oxygen, keeps them lubricated. Eventually this shit ran out.
Dune-esque contraption where they breathe out through their nose. After the flip where he's seemingly betrayed, he goes back to one TV. Doubles down on the booze, though. It's only like an hour and 30 minutes in where Rip Torn is confronted about that he was Bowie had the X-ray camera perpetrated upon him, and he brings it up, and that's that's one of the only times we get more than one line of exposition, because he starts talking about the place I come from is the water, and I'm doing this, and that's why, but I'm an alien, so I can see the X-rays. It's blinding. It's just, the rest of the movie is suggestive. You know what I mean? It just sort of hints at, oh, you're looking at the green painting, and then his family, and then it turns brown, so that must mean the water goes away, because he doesn't talk about it. So this is the most exposition-heavy portion there, and then... to make up, it looks like they go to Joshua Tree and do shrooms, so they're just sitting in the desert, talking. After that, they're just hanging out. And it's hard to track chronologically because, again, the editing choices were so severe. Because they'd show you just 1 second of, Mary Lou, crying in a bed, and then they go back to, the government business negotiations. You're like, what the fuck was that? Why did you put that in there? It didn't make any sense.
It would be better if this movie had absolutely just told you up front, hey, we're on mushrooms now. Hey, we're on cocaine now.
Just a little chyron that pops up that's he's high right now, or he's seeing through time. I'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%.
So yeah, a lot of this movie would be better. We'd be in a better place if we knew what our subject was on. It's 1976. Everything is wildly everything's a wild gray area. So you can't talk about it, but you can imply that they're on it. There's times where they're definitely on acid. There's times where they're definitely on shrooms. There's times where they're definitely just drunk. There's times
for sure
cocaine has to be involved in this. I'm surprised marijuana never makes an appearance. Maybe it's involved the entire time. You don't know.
Yeah, just watching it, am I high? He's a spaceman, but he just
you should be watching
town.
Those. You should be if you're watching those.
I gotta say, I watched this a couple nights ago and was a little but I saw it again this time, and I do really appreciate of the time stuff, that TV wall when we just get the full montage of 70s shit flying by. That was fun. I like that. And just
I think if we were children of that era, and I was born 2 years after this movie. I believe you're born a full 7 years after that. I feel like there are references you and I are absolutely missing in that. Like, if this movie was made even 10 years ago, we'd be getting like a "What's the Beef" mess reference and an Energizer Bunny reference. Like, we'd be getting that shit.
That would have been
so Elvis good. Was the only thing I recognized. Otherwise, I was just like, this is something else that you and I are just not accustomed to.
Yeah, because I was trying to fit it into like a box. So I'm like, is it sci-fi? Is it a thing? What are we feeling? Because it's hard to compare to anything just because it was like, well, we're trying this. And so I break this movie up into, he's headed towards this decision where it's like, he's got the spaceship together, he's going to launch it, and then all of a sudden he's trapped in his car and he's going to the launch, but then he's not. And then Farnsworth dies. So the government must have stepped in here, but nobody like addresses it. I could have used, I swear, just a character describing like, here's the plan. We're going to take out the alien man. We're going to do this. Or like, we're going to discredit it. You just have to assume it's like, okay, well, then that happened. And so the backstretch of the movie, again, I said like, it's kind of like Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, because the back half is like when he's in the zoo. It's sort of like, he got to the destination, and then you don't really understand it. He's sort of in rooms. He's doing whatever, and then it doesn't really move. And then this movie had a Return of the King-esque streak at the end of like, is it gonna end now? No. It's like, oh, he's gonna have another lunch. Is it over? No. They kept running by it.
I was honestly surprised that it ended when it ended. I was like, oh, we're just leaving it here. All right, whatever. Like that, and that's very 1976, 1975 thing to do. But at the same time, I was just like, oh, I was expecting more of a resolution, more of just anything.
Anything. Like, he's not going back. He's not going to try. Because he could try, guys. Like, you could try. He doesn't want to go back.
The ending of this movie is absolutely the ending of a movie where the subject was alcoholism. Okay? Yeah. But that hasn't been the subject of this movie. This movie has had like 4 other subjects. Just alcoholism happens to be just a side trait.
And I mean, he's so just out of it. Like, he's disinterested in the movie that he is currently in. I mean, there's a scene where he's supposed to be being held captive and he's in the room with the chain hanging bed, and the scientists come in and they're like, all right, remove your pants, bend over the bed. And he's just sort of like, I can't see the TV. Like that. He's
definitely more upset about the TV, and he still complies with just pulling down his pants. He's just like, let's just get this over with. All right. Yeah. You're not going to find anything extra special. You've already done this 3 other times. Okay.
And then through that stretch, like, we're in, we're out, we're seeing James, with the mixed race family, like he's just sort of there, more boobies. But at this point, it's just sort of like, I'm looking just at my phone going like, they're really taking their time here. He's in
at the ending, David Bowie has found time to make a record. The guy who's hiding out from the government has made a public. Well,
that part was so bullshit.
It's sold enough that it's at this warehouse style record shop. Okay,
that part was also so bullshit because it was just sort of like, this is the cheesiest, like, but he's actually David Bowie too, and maybe I was that all along. Like, fuck you, fuck you. Just, and then not only that, but they also go, well, we're not going to put any of that music in here either. Like,
no, we're not.
Fuck you. Just put one of those songs on. We couldn't get it. Also, I mean, there's another really upsetting scene with him and those doctors where he's begging for them not to fuck with his eyes, and they shoot the X-ray at him, and he's like, now the contacts are stuck to me, and it's like, it just was like, oh god. I mean,
that's an upsetting scene because they just won't let him be. But at the same time, they do that switcheroo move on him, like, nurse, give him another drink. And he takes another drink, and then they steal the tweezer from him. Like, oh, you asshole! How did you fall for that?
Oh god. Well, again, he's disinterested with being this character and B in this movie. It's just I'm gonna drink and then recover between scenes from my heroin addiction. But he's just screaming. Yeah, at a point like, no, stop! Don't do that to my eyes. You're like, oh god. Yeah, he does become a musician. I do like that Santa Rip Torn. He visits the Tower Records, I guess. Is that there's just the rows of CDs in there?
Just rows of records, vinyl records, just as far as the eye can see in that one shop.
And he has a COVID cough too. That was good. Like they left that in. He's coughing. Movie does not want to end, but then Rip Torn and he meet. He becomes a musician, and then the weird, like, they add a bunch of curious decisions that they never go back to. They're just throwing, like, why did they do that? Or, like, there's country music for a second. I don't get it. The weirdest one, and this may be one of the worst endings to a movie I've ever seen, but David Bowie is wearing the hat, and he puts his head down. And you can see, like, people sort of in the background, but, like, there's a tree that's blowing. But he holds it there. He just holds his head down through the whole credits. So they were just having a conversation, and then he's just.
I have a feeling that's the Candy Clark scene, but that's also. Yes. I forget who's having that scene. Who's sharing that scene with him?
It's Rip Torn.
It's Rip Torn. Okay,
because he's talking about the record.
Okay, so him and Rip Torn are going back and forth about whatever the fuck they're talking about. But then Bowie just like excuses himself, but then drops his drink, breaks the glass. The waiter comes over, is like, "Well, I think Mr. Easton's haven't had enough, don't you think?" And he's like, "Yes, I do." And then he just passes out there. Again, that's absolutely a 1976 ending. There's just. Roll credits over this one scene.
It was so much. I mean,
but it's also that's what makes it super underwhelming. Like, he never gets back to his home. It's never discovered that he's just been a psychopath this entire time.
It doesn't show up on the news that it's like Alien Man busted.
Alien Man has a gold record. Okay, like his record's actually been discounted by a whole $1. From $4.99 to $3.99, and you can still have someone open up the physical record without having just a demo on display. No, we'll just open this one for you. You can listen to it. There's a lot of problems with this movie. It's been super interesting still. Okay, I'm glad you brought this to my attention. I would love to see the U.S. version now, and I have a feeling it might even be a better version.
I'm curious to see what choices they made from this. I'm also curious. I didn't get to look it up, or not didn't get to. I just didn't look up the differences between the book and what came out on celluloid there, because there's got to be, there's a
13-year gap between the book and the movie, so it could be anything.
I would really like to know where that goes. Kush, yeah, would you recommend this movie to people?
If you're a fan of David Bowie, absolutely. Just absorb this content. It's an interesting movie. It's not a good movie. It's a very underwhelming movie. But the entire time, I was not bored. I wanted to know where it goes. That's why I was underwhelmed. But yes, I would say if you're a fan of David Bowie and you like how he is as an actor, totally check this out.
Yeah, and it also lends itself to, if you want to see what experimental film on the big
Hollywood
screen
Absolutely.
Was just, they take some shots. There really is just different stuff in here where it's like editing themes, like the timing of what's going on. I mean, I'm sure there was an internal logic to it, because it wasn't, I was going to say clumsy, but it wasn't like without intent. Like, you could tell they're going for stuff in stretches. And so, yeah, Duffy watched it with me. One thing she added was Rip Torn, who was a professor. She couldn't remember his name, so she just called him the fucking professor.
It's not unfair.
But we both couldn't, especially for me on the second rewatch, and then for her going in fresh was just sort of, It's not good. I don't understand what's going on, but it's still kind of watchable. Like, even, you know what I mean? Like, you're just curious, like, oh, what are they going to do here?
They do enough, again, experimental Hollywood at the time. They're doing enough stuff where you think it's going somewhere, or you hope it's going somewhere. It's caught your attention. You want to know where it's going. Just before we cut out of this, the top 5 movies of 1976, according to Alexa behind me here: To Fly, which I've never heard of before.
What?
Rocky. The third remake of A Star Is Born. All the President's Men.
Yes.
That's 1976.
Wow. Man, that movies have changed so much in that stretch.
We didn't officially start keeping count of box office stats till 1977 with Star Wars.
Wow. Well, Star Wars was the next year. Oh man, those are both technically about beings from outside of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That is staggering to think of, that those are separated by a year. Star Wars seems many years ahead of it. Wow. that one.
We also had Network this year, dude. Like, wow. And while that was experimental as well, like, it feels more polished than what we just saw tonight.
That was something. I think that sums up my thoughts on this one. I mean, I think I've hammered a number of times, like, small re-edit, and this is just somebody going through a drug phase, because that's most of what the movie's dealing with. Parts of it are hard, and then it's weird, and then, yeah, David Bowie is like, with that fake gun, like, he has it in his own mouth. He's stirring a drink, and I'm pretty sure, because they were playing with it while they're both naked, like, it was used in a sex act as well. Like, that was also on the cutting room floor. Oh my God, I forgot to mention the second most disturbing thing. I'm so sorry. Just before we go away.
Break it in.
When Rip Torn is having his first dalliance with an 18-year-old, as he puts it, there's this scene as their relationship is concluding where she picks up his penis and then says hello to it, and then says, well, you're nothing like my father, which is disturbing enough. And then she says it again after a cutaway. Yeah, you're nothing like my father. Right? Like it's a microphone. Hello? Is this thing on?
In that scene, he's actually going through a bevy of co-eds. It's not just one co-ed. There's a second co-ed who also compares him to his father.
That was a different chick?
There are 3 chicks. 2 of them compare him to their fathers.
Hard look for my guy, fathers in the 70s.
That was a weird time back then. It happened. I'm glad you picked it up. That's also why I know Rip Torn was naked, completely naked, because she grabs that sucker like a microphone. It's not the biggest penis in the world.
She like doots it with her nose, like boop. Like
she's having a good time with it. Like that's why Rip Torn is having the greatest time on this set.
It's full on again for experimental. It just. How much CGI would be around Scarlett Johansson for this thing? Like she would have a shield thicker than plot armor of non-real peni. Anyway, so this has been Kush and Kai.
I don't hate this movie. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. I don't know how many people I would recommend it to, but I'm looking forward to seeing the quote-unquote U.S. theatrical version, as I apparently saw the Universal version.
I think I'm going to check that out, too. Got 3 out of 5 from Roger Ebert, who echoed some of the points that we made. I got to say, this was a memorable experience with the lady, just getting to watch a, like, what is going on movie. A lot of fun stuff.
If this was a bad movie, we wouldn't have half this conversation. So
there were just so many pieces of, what's going on? What are they doing? But I do respect that they tried some things here. It was just sort of, I don't recognize the dance that you're doing, but you're moving a lot.
This would be better as a Netflix series. Again, we want to see how he builds his business. We want to see
that would be fascinating in there.
We want to see him abandon his business, although keeping it control, where he's making baller ass decisions like Contact me with every 50 millionth that we go up. You want to see his relationship with his Earth wife? You want to see his relationship with his Martian wife?
I'd love, because there's a conspiratorial aspect. It's sort of like he's kind of working with the government, but then he's not. And then one of them thinks that he's not trying to take water back. He's trying to bring them here, and they're going to kill everybody. And then, like, he can have weird offspringy. There's eggs around or something. The powers, you can't really tell all the time. There's so many avenues here. Guys,
I want to see the bullshit US version, too, with the guy from the Heartbreak Kid.
I'm going to check that one out, too.
If you can.
Well, Kush, that's all I got in that shoot right there.
That's been us.
Yeah,
I don't know when we're dropping this, but in 2021. But check us out for episode 52 on the Queen's Gambit, the other Nicholas so-and-so movie, and Cobra Kai, which we will have a rebuke for season 3 coming up.
Oh yes, the trailer dropped. I
haven't seen the trailer yet.
Oh, scrumptious! Please watch that right after this too. We need to talk, Kush. We need to talk about that separately.
I'm already.
We just did 2 podcasts, but that specifically, I would also like to talk about.
Okay. I'm in. I'm in.
Stuff. All right, man. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been great as always. Check out all of the. Wait, where can the feeds and the things be found? What have you been up to?
We're on almost major platforms, but you can find us at the BosNet.family, where we will have things like polite beer expressions and Kush and Kai's and microdoses of various aspects. We have a great time doing this. We love you. You love us, we hope. And I've been Kush Hayes.
I've been Kai. Take care of yourself.
From the BosNet family.
Are you angry at titties?